Do you know, by any chance, who was the first person accurately to portray small insects? Most famously, the flea, which is a very recognisable image, which is the cover of his book, Micrographia. He was a remarkable scientist, town planner. He has a law named after him of tension and springs. He was a contemporary of Newton and Christopher Wren. He was responsible for much of the town planning after the fire of London. And he used a microscope to see animals, including this little flea, and an ant, and there it is, which he was an amazing artist, as you can see. And he describes precisely how he got the ant to keep still. He said, "I gave it a gill of brandy, which after a while knocked him down dead drunk. He struggled, wonderful phrases, for a pretty while very much."
Sounds like he was drinking
for a pretty while very much.
One for you, one for me.
Till at last, certain bubbles issuing out of its mouth, it ceased to move and remained moveless for a good while.
Remained moveless?
Yeah. Well, it was in 1665 the book came out, Micrographia.
Well done.
A gill, by the way, is a quarter of a pint.
Wow.
They can hold their booze, can't they, ants?
Yeah.
8 times their body weight.
But what was this man's name? Remember? Audience?
Remember.
Robert Hooke. Well, yeah, Ian Robertson shouted that. Ian Robinson is a physicist, that's cheating. But yes, Robert Hooke. And he suffered, as many did, although he was one of the greatest geniuses who ever lived. Isaac Newton was a really thoroughly ghastly man. And he particularly hated Hooke and had him erased from history, because anybody who wasn't Newton was just not good enough. And all the portraits of him he got rid of, because he was so powerful, Newton, because he was such a genius and so recognised around the world. And an artist named Rita Greer has set herself the task of creating more portraits of Hooke than there are of Newton to redress the balance. And here's one. It's based on meticulously researched likenesses of him. There are now 20 in the world, as opposed to 16 of Newton. So Hooke has won, although obviously Newton was a truly great man.
He was a bit of a wrong un.
I'm afraid he was.
A terrible egomaniac.
Total egomaniac.
Gravity.
I mean,
go to your head.
Yeah.
He looks like he's had a few gills of whiskey there.
He does, doesn't he? He's a little lawyer. He doesn't look as if he's had much sun.
Look, it's 2 little ants meeting in a pub. Hello, Mr. I'm Brevy. I love you. No, I love you.
Well, there you go. On the subject of keeping still, how hard is it to be a nude model? Don't you remember that,
Oh, that was a good night.
It's the woman second from the left who seems to be most enjoying the view. The one with the orange scarf.
He's going to need a bigger pad than that.
They're all just drawing sections of you, aren't they?
I'll do the helmet.
Were you being funny there, or...?
That's not really him.
Oh, it's not real? I assumed that you would be funny naked. I'm sorry, Alan.
Funny naked.
Well, that's what I can see.
Yes, you say what you see.
Yeah.
But there is actually a register of artists' models, RAM, that looks after the interests of models. And it thinks that the idea that life modelling is a breeze is completely wrong. To keep still for a long while is very, very hard.
Pins and needles and cramp.
Pins and needles, cramp. So you have to do one thing at a time. You start with short poses called gestures, bold, action-oriented poses, which are used as a warm-up. And then you go 2 minutes, then 5 minutes, and then eventually 30+. There's more work for women than men. The classes prefer them, and there are more of them in the market, it appears. And in 1998, a man called George Bond took Northampton College to an industrial tribunal, claiming that he was not being employed on the basis of his gender and that it was sexual discrimination. In fact, they were able to demonstrate that it was personal. And the reason was he couldn't hold a pose, he fidgeted, went to the loo too often, had a background in erotic films which troubled the A-level students, particularly one 16-year-old at whom he winked when she was drawing.
Oh. Wait, what did he wink
claimed
with?
He was squinting. Oh, what did he wink with? Well, he said that. He explained to them he didn't have glasses, so he was squinting, but he did also improvise a pose which involved sticking his bottom into the air, which was described by some students as giving an unfortunate view. So,
Didn't want him. They didn't want him there. They didn't want to draw him.
No, they just didn't want George there.
Get out, George.
So he lost the case. But there are contentious issues described by the Register of Artist Models. And contentious issues include raids on studios by amusing non-art students who just want to see a nudie person.
Yes.
It's very silly. A warning against passing window cleaners. Yeah. And their policy is to suspend any member, that's an odd way of phrasing it, who gets an erection during a sitting. When I say suspend any member,
a member?
I mean...
Right, OK, yeah.
Suspend yourself, wouldn't you?
Forced out of the
You'd
register.
have to say, all right, I'll get my coat.
Right, yeah.
And I'll just hang it over there.
He's like being struck off then, is it?
Yes,
So, yeah,
basically it is, yeah.
You
You're
can
struck
never
off the
be a nude
register.
model
You can't ever
if you
be.
can't control yourself.
How are you doing that? Yeah, you're suspending.
And that's why I'm banned from RAM.
That was very impressive.
That's with his clothes on as well. Let's give him a gill of brandy and see if
An AA gill of brandy. Absolutely. Well, there you are. That's Ram. Now, little Bo Peep keeps lesbian sheep, but doesn't know how to find them. Can you help? Oh, look at that.
So was
lesbian
that
sheep.
Right.
How can you tell if sheep are lesbian?
Well,
By their conduct.
yes.
The trouble is you can't. You can
really?
with so many species.
Can't you just the wafts of K.D. Lang coming from the field? Lamb.
Something to do with sex.
Well, no, the funny thing is, ewes just stand still.
If they want
in order-
sex.
If they want sex. So you can't tell if sheep are lesbians, and yet, this is also true. We have had a huge problem with lesbian sheep.
Well, what? It's not my fault.
Yeah. But we have. How did this happen?
Well, they're not producing any lambs.
Yeah, they were. Oh. But I've just told you can't tell whether a sheep's lesbian or not.
So the rams don't know.
Think of the word.
The word lesbian, sheep.
Yeah, it has two meanings.
Problem.
There's two meanings. One is sapphic, preferring their own kind, female,
Yes.
gay, homosexual.
Yep.
The other is from the island of...
Lesbos.
Yes.
Oh.
Sheep from the island of Lesbos were transported around Europe, and they had foot and mouth disease, and they communicated it all around Europe.
Oh.
So lesbian sheep were responsible for an outbreak in 1994.
Well, you
Right.
need Jonathan
Yeah.
Creek to get that one.
Well, there you are. So that's pretty exciting, isn't it?
Well,
No, it's not.
You know how you said the lady ones just stand still if
Yeah.
they want sex?
Yeah.
Do the lesbian ones stand still close together so that they can do stuff? Or
No.
are they all just sparsely standing apart?
So they're all waiting for someone else to make the first move.
Yeah.
And the ram will do
Awkward.
it. The ram will tup her, as the word is in sheep.
Bloody rams.
The word tup, isn't it? We don't use it so as often as we should.
I've never heard it before.
No.
that's good.
I know what my tuppence is, but...
Now, on to keeping time. When is the present?
Yeah.
Now.
No, unfortunately, that was about 70 milliseconds ago.
Yeah.
We're always 70 milliseconds behind.
They were good times, man.
The time taken between light hitting the eye being processed was about 70 milliseconds,
So is it-
which you may
is
say
it-
isn't much.
Is it then?
It's then, yeah, exactly. But if a reasonably mild 85 miles per hour cricket ball or tennis ball, that would be 10 feet. So you really have to anticipate
So
where
you're seeing the ball in the future,
Yeah.
and you have to predict the future.
Yeah, you have to predict where it'll be.
Where it'll
because
be,
your
and
brain
it's-
won't see it until it's already passed.
But so you'll have to just...
You have to guess that it's going to be
Guess.
there. You're so used to the course it's taken. You can see it from the racket or you can see it from the bowler's arm.
Right.
But you don't have time physically to see the ball with your eye. It's
Right.
past you. Bowlers bowl up to 100 miles an hour, and tennis serves are way faster.
Yes.
And researchers at the University of Tokyo have proved how we are indeed incapable of this kind of speed by building a robotic hand that can play paper, scissors, stone and always beat a human being because it can read our gestures quicker than we can read. Its processing is so much faster than ours. We got a bit of VT of this. Here we go. You've hardly got time to see it yourself, it's so quick. It wins 100% of the time.
It won't beat me.
That's the scissors.
We didn't have a telly for 10 years when I was growing up. I'm brilliant at that game.
But you have to, it just reads your hand movement before...
Even so, Stephen, I
Okay.
think I could take it.
What if your hand was underneath the table and then you brought it out?
Yeah.
Because it hasn't seen you do it then. So you could beat it
So
then.
if you cheated, it would, yeah.
Yeah.
You're in
It's
another
just
room.
if you're
That's
shy
not how
or
the game is
something.
played.
Somebody's playing rock, paper, scissors with a robot. That's the future, isn't it? Really?
It's how it all begins. It's how Skynet first adapted the cyborg.
Really?
And then it, yeah. I
What?
mean, it starts with chess and
Robot.
games.
We're sending back from the future
Don't-
to play rock, paper, scissors.
It's absolutely astonishing. It is
And what would-
beating our own brain, which is the most extraordinary thing we know in the universe,
Yes.
at perception and time and reflex, in a small way.
I played chess against the computer on a flight,
Oh, yeah.
and turns out I'm rubbish at chess. And after a few games, I'd lost every one. The computer started taking its king out and putting it right in the middle of the board. Completely on its own, and then I would really struggle to pin it down. I did win a couple of games. It was immensely
That's a relief,
satisfying.
isn't it? Oh, they're so good, chess programs now. It's frightening.
But I mean, you know, in terms of human achievements, I mean, poetry, music, and such like.
Oh,
Yes. You know, way behind.
Yes, yes, of course. And of course, they haven't passed what's called the Turing test, which is the most important thing for a machine. Alan Turing, who posited a test, which was whether or not you could conduct a conversation with an artificial machine in such a way that you wouldn't know it was an artificial machine. And if it passes that stage, that really is a moment in computer development. It's quite scary. And then you've got a consciousness, because what sort of questions would you ask to
Are
check
you
it?
a machine?
Well, yeah, it's going to help.
That's right.
And when it goes, no.
No.
Let's
that
just
really-
assume that it
that
won't be
really
that
would-
easy.
If it lied to win, that really would be
Yeah.
the next step
Yeah.
of evolution for
What's your
robots.
happiest memory? Things like that, you know. Things.
Just now.
That would give it away.
Master switched me
Yes.
on this morning.
Oh, it's a beautiful moment now. I live in the moment. Well, I'm 70 milliseconds before the moment.
Anyway, here's a test to show you how easy it is to keep an image in your head. This is the departure board at Grand Central Station in New York. You're trying to memorize it. All right. Now, the question is, when does the next train to White Plains leave?
12:25.
12:25. Is that what I thought?
12:48.
No, it's really mean of me. In Grand Central Station, all trains depart a minute after the time given. 12:25, but you had to know that in Grand Central Station they have a minute's gate time to allow you, without accidents, not to have to run. I know it's so unfair on you. I'm really sorry. You've memorised it so well, sir. I feel like such a pig. Oh, did you secretly flick a V at first? Totally did. Anyway, sorry. They have this gate time.
Well, they don't do that here.
Quite the reverse,
Yeah,
exactly.
like
Shut the
30
doors.
seconds
But it's
before.
impossible.
Yeah, the service is now leaving.
My wife is pregnant coming down the steps and they shut the door. I said, there's my wife there. She's pregnant. Can you wait
Just.
19 seconds? Because it's actually before the time the train's supposed to go. No.
You seriously, you missed the
Shut the
train?
doors. They shut the door.
You could have just left her. Did you get the next one?
Darling, you take the next one.
Yes, get the next one. Oh, fine.
Here's an interesting thing. Have you been to India?
Yes.
Do you remember India's time difference from us?
5 or 6 hours.
It's actually 5.5 hours. But there is a very interesting thing about a 5.5 hour difference. You'd think, oh, God, how am I going to work out the difference? And old Aggers put me onto this, the cricket commentator, because he's often in India. He said, this is what you want to do, old boy. He said, you take your watch. So here we are, let's say it's 9:05 in England.
Right.
Right?
9, yeah.
If you turn the watch upside down,
2:35.
you get, yeah. And that's the time it is. 5.5 hours ahead. So it's just the watch upside down.
Mine's digital.
There you are, you see? That's useless.
It's 8:15.
Well, that's hopeless, I'm afraid. But with an analogue watch, as you can see, it works.
Oh, that's brilliant.
It's really neat,
Clever.
Isn't it? It is neat.
Clever.
Well, neat. Neaty, neat, neat. Why do clocks go clockwise? Why do they go that way around?
Because that's the way we see things, isn't it?
Yeah.
Not necessarily.
Because it's
Left
forward.
to right.
There's a particular reason. And it's in the northern hemisphere. That's how sundials, sun moves that way around. So we're just used to the shadow from the gnomon of the sundial. Now, a question about keeping quiet. How quiet is the quietest place in the world?
well quiet.
Well, is it? There's an anechoic chamber somewhere in America. Is it?
There is. There's one in Britain too.
And there's one here,
Yeah.
which is it's just completely devoid of all sound.
Yeah.
And it sort of absorbs sound when you go in it.
That's right. It's at the University of Salford, and it is minus 12.4 decibels. As you can see there, it's got all these sort of wedges and things to stop any kind of echoing. Actually, there's a hemi-anechoic chamber with a reverberation chamber as well in the National Physical Laboratory. And I went there and I recorded myself popping a balloon, first in the reverberation chamber, and then in the hemi-anechoic chamber, which is slightly less than a full anechoic, but it's still pretty bloody amazoid. Did I just say amazoid?
You really did.
Oh, God, I'm sad. Hang on. I am in the reverberation chamber. It's extraordinary. Wow. Going to burst the balloon now. So remember that.
Right. That's the balloon.
That's the reverberation chamber.
Okay.
Still going.
That was fantastic.
You're off your face in there, aren't you?
And now I am in a hemi-anechoic chamber. Here we go. 3, 2, 1.
Incredible.
Flat sound. How exciting is that?
There we are. Thank you to the National Physical Laboratory. So, who has the world's biggest mouth?
Blue whale.
Oh, the strange thing is, you're so close. The blue whale's the biggest animal on Earth that's ever been. It's the second biggest. Has the biggest mouth, oddly enough.
Another whale, a different sort of
It's
whale.
another whale, yes. It's usually found in the Arctic,
Oh, right.
under the ice pack. It's a hugely slow animal, beautiful. One was found recently that had an 1870s harpoon in it. It's still alive. They live a very long time.
Good God.
Huge things. They've got a lovely smile on their face that is curved, a bit like a bow. So they're known as bowhead whales. Isn't they marvellous? Beautiful. The idea of killing them, but they have the most blubber of any whale.
That's probably why he's not so happy.
But the bowhead has a unique organ in its mouth. It's really nothing quite like it. It's the only thing that you could say is like it, frankly. There's its baleen plates, the sort of hairy, feathery bits that it sieves food with.
Wow.
But the bit underneath that isn't a tongue is actually more like a penis. And I know that sounds silly, but it's...
Sounds great.
Well,
I was supposed to just think that, sorry.
it is a sort of material, I mean, a fleshy material that engorges... It engorges with blood and becomes absolutely huge
Erect.
with blood and erect in its mouth.
Yes.
And it cools it because it takes all the blood right up and it pushes it out and gets the water out of it. So when it overheats, it's all this water goes and all its blood is in its sort of mouth cock, if you could call it that. Way of cooling its brain. It's the corpus cavernosum maxillaris is its proper name.
Mouth cock.
But it's a tissue. It opens the mouth, the Arctic water flows in.
Mouth organ.
Cools the organ. And that cools its brain. So it's a kind of 12-foot-long penis in its mouth. 12-foot-long, I mean, it's like a lamppost in length.
I don't think he's a member of the Ram Society.
So it's like its own thermostat then, really. So
Yes,
it's
absolutely, a cooling system. So, anyway, there's your bowhead whale. Now, that brings us to the business of the scores. You might say, damn, it's close. In first place, with -7, it's Bill Bailey. And second equal, with -9, it's Jason and Sarah.
Wow.
Fourth place with -10 is the audience. But our runaway loser with -27 is Alan Davies. So it's thanks from Sarah, Jason, Bill, Alan and me. You all keep in touch now. You hear? Goodbye.
Christmas Eve for the QI Festive Special with Joe Brand, Brendan O'Carroll, aka Mrs. Brown, and Phil Jupiters tomorrow at 9.